Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Thursday, January 14th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and we begin with some breaking news. A big response to a brush fire in the North County. Flames broke out in the hillside near Palomar College in San Marcos amid dry and windy conditions. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson has the latest from the scene.
What firefighters are doing right now is they're trying to cut down this tree that partially burned during this vegetation fire earlier this afternoon. About 40 acres burned here, and the reason it was such a concern today is because the temperatures were so high, the humidity was so low. It's the kind of condition that could become an explosive wildfire. But fortunately, in this particular instance, a lot of firefighters responded quickly. They got the fire under control, and now it's just a matter of cleaning up the hot spots and making sure that things don't reignite anytime during the course of the evening or even early tomorrow morning. At Palomar College, Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
An urgent warning surrounding Joe Biden's presidential inauguration. Federal law enforcement officials say domestic extremists may be prompted to strike after seeing the siege on the U.S. Capitol. Nadia Romero is in Washington with more on that investigation and the potential for violence.
The U.S. Capitol looks like we're preparing for war against homegrown terrorists rooted in white supremacy. 20,000 National Guard troops are expected to be in and around D.C. during the inauguration. And we know that a special unit from Ohio has been requested from the federal government.
Horror, confusion, and pain. Just some of the things lawmakers felt during the attempted coup at the U.S. Capitol.
I haven't seen a sight like that since I was in Iraq. In a war zone.
But now there's a new concern surrounding these images. Motivation. Law enforcement agencies warn the insurrection is potentially inspiring homegrown terrorists to carry out more attacks, both in Washington and around the country.
I would also be significantly concerned about some of these longer-term planning efforts amongst the Boogaloo Boys and other of these LARPers and cosplay seditionists, hitting at not just state capitals and seats of power across the 50 states, but also infrastructure, hitting soft targets.
Already, prosecutors have charged dozens of people with federal crimes related to the Capitol chaos. Law enforcement expects to arrest hundreds more.
We saw the birth of a domestic terror movement last week, and we're going to have to deal with that in the months and years ahead.
President Trump urges calm.
Violence and vandalism have absolutely no place in our country.
But chatter about copycat attacks has put federal and state officials on high alert.
They won't catch anyone by surprise this time. We know they're there. We know how violent they can be.
In response, thousands of armed National Guard troops surround Washington, D.C. Barriers block streets, and the iconic National Mall will be closed on Inauguration Day.
We are on the path to making sure that it is secure, and it is going to be secure.
And there's an ongoing investigation into that coup attempt from last week. Some 30 lawmakers have signed onto a letter requesting an investigation into their fellow congressmen and Republicans who have come out with these guided tours that they likely did for some of the rioters the day before the attack. The question is, was this planned? Was this some sort of a reconnaissance mission? From Washington, I'm Nadia Romero.
President Donald Trump's impeachment trial could begin just as President-elect Joe Biden takes the oath of office. Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has dismissed calls by Democrats to reconvene the Senate before Inauguration Day. The trial timeline and schedule are set by Senate procedures and would start as soon as the House delivers the article of impeachment.
I think for the sake of all of our safety, having him removed and not serving another hour is ideal. If it's beyond his presidency, for other reasons, like accountability and the consequences, of course, those will have to be considered by the Senate.
As the only president to be impeached twice, Trump faces a single charge of incitement of insurrection. No president has ever been convicted in the Senate, and it would take a 2/3 vote against Trump. President-elect Biden is hoping to turn the tide on the pandemic with a nearly $2 trillion coronavirus plan. It would speed up the vaccine rollout as well as provide financial help to individuals, businesses, states, and local governments. The plan includes $1,400 checks for individuals. His lofty goal is to put the country on the path to recovery in his administration's first 100 days. One major San Diego health system is moving forward with vaccinations for patients 65 and older. But KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman says it'll be a bit longer before it's widespread.
After first vaccinating frontline healthcare workers, hospital systems like UC San Diego Health are now offering doses to some patients 65 and over. Officials there estimate they can offer as many as 500 vaccines per day, but for all local hospitals, that depends on
if we had any vaccine. Well, the only vaccine we've been given is for the healthcare providers.
Scripps Health CEO Chris Van Gorder says they're still finalizing vaccines for some frontline staff, but might soon have some left over for seniors.
We're hopeful that maybe next week we'll be able to do at least some of the 65 plus patients. We're now trying to calculate how much vaccine we'd have for that.
Van Gorder says Scripps is used to doing large-scale vaccinations like flu shots, and they're ready to scale up.
If the government really wanted to speed up the process, just get us the vaccine. Give us the very loose guidelines is what we would recommend, and we will start putting a vaccine in a lot of patients. And we can categorize it by the sickest. We can do it by age. The challenging part is when we say you're just going to give it to grocery store workers or some other essential worker. We have no idea how to even identify those individuals, and so that's what slows, I think, the process down. So make it simple. Get us the vaccine.
Healthcare systems will communicate directly with patients 65 and over to make appointments once they get vaccines. Some of that will happen through online portals like myscripts.com, so make sure you're signed up for those with your provider. Van Gorder says people are very eager to get vaccinated.
My head of the foundation was offered $1 million for a vaccine, a donation of $1 million. And we said no, that when they qualified, we'd let those individuals know. So there's a lot of people that are very anxious to get the vaccine. I mean, let's face it, we have a lot of seniors that have been locked away in their homes for a very, very long time waiting for this day. So this is the population, we need to vaccinate.
Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
And county health authorities are trying to figure out why 6 healthcare workers who received the COVID-19 vaccine Wednesday had allergic reactions. The vaccines were administered at the Petco Park super site. KPBS reporter John Carroll has more on the possibility of allergic reactions from vaccines.
Things were back to normal at the Petco Park Vaccine Superstation today. The partnership between the county, UC San Diego Health, and the Padres working to get vaccines into the arms of the more than 600,000 healthcare workers in the county. On Wednesday morning, the operation here slowed to a crawl after 6 people experienced allergic reactions.
It was just the clustering of them together that led them to do I think a great slowdown to be able to assess the situation.
We checked with the county to see if they've been able to determine what was behind the cluster of allergic reactions. They emailed us a brief statement saying, "We have not seen a report with specifics on what occurred, so are unable to comment further." And they pointed out that the FDA and CDC are the primary investigating authorities. San Diego dermatologist Dr. Seaver Soon knows all about allergic reactions. He says if you've had allergic reactions to vaccines before, you should talk to your doctor before getting the COVID vaccine. He says immediate reactions like the ones experienced at Petco are potentially the most dangerous, but
if you have kind of these delayed reactions like, fever, general wellness, body aches, those for me, those are manageable and allows you to get immunity.
Healthcare worker Deborah Walsh has really been through the ringer when it comes to COVID.
The next day, though, I woke up and I had chills and body aches pretty much most of that day.
Walsh first contracted and then recovered from the virus last summer. Then, on December 30th, she got the Moderna vaccine, the same one being given out at Petco.
No fever, but just felt pretty bad, and I was pretty much stuck in bed all day.
Then, on New Year's Day, Walsh says she woke up and felt just fine.
From what I understand, if someone has had a previous infection, that the immune response to the vaccine can be magnified. So that's what I got.
We reached out to Moderna for comment, but no one returned our call or email. Meantime, Walsh says she's preparing herself for the second dose of the vaccine she'll get next week. She says she's already taken the next 2 days off after that to recover. But even with what she's been through, she still has this piece of advice.
I think everyone should get vaccinated.
And this bit of reassurance from Dr. Soon.
Allergy to vaccines is not a very common event.
While the county works to figure out what's behind the allergic reactions at Petco, the cost-benefit analysis for the vast majority of us seems clear. When the vaccine becomes available, we should all get it. John Carroll, KPBS News.
And the vaccine has arrived in Imperial County, an area that's been hit particularly hard by coronavirus, but the limited supply is forcing some tough decisions. Here's iNews Source investigative reporter Jennifer Bowman with more.
Imperial County officials say they are doing everything possible to get more vaccines, but they acknowledge the roughly 6,000 doses they have on hand won't cover all those eligible for the shots. So far, only the highest risk workers in healthcare have received a COVID-19 vaccination. Most of them work at the county's 2 hospitals, both of which saw a sharp rise in patients over the fall. Here's Jeanette Angelo, the county's public health director, at a news conference last week.
But because there's not enough vaccine right now, we have to distribute in an equitable way so that everybody who's doing that frontline work can get at least their highest risk vaccinated.
The county expects more vaccine doses this week, but also expects the limited availability to continue as the vaccination program progresses. As of Thursday, 460 residents have died from COVID-19. For KPBS, I'm iNews Source investigative reporter Jennifer Bowman.
iNews Source is an independently funded nonprofit partner of KPBS. The number of Americans filing for first-time unemployment benefits is going in the wrong direction. The latest report from the Labor Department shows another 965,000 people filed for benefits last week. That's much higher than the previous week and the most since late August. Weekly claims have been stuck above 700,000 since September. 284,000 people filed claims for pandemic unemployment assistance, a program for those who are self-employed or gig workers. Local workforce experts from San Diego's top industries say they are looking forward to some economic rebound in 2021. And they say the COVID-19 recession has been a tale of 2 different realities. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer has more.
San Diegans' income bracket and ethnicity plays a large role in how they have been economically affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. That news comes from Ryan Ratcliffe, an associate professor of economics at the University of San Diego.
If you are in one of these, lower income brackets, if you're in one of these communities of color, the recession is substantially, the experience of the recession has been substantially worse.
The hardest hit sector of San Diego's economy has been tourism and accommodations, which is still slow to rebound compared to other industries in the region.
We lost about 50% of our revenue as a tourism community, and we've lost 37% of jobs within our sector, which here in San Diego is about 77,000 jobs that have been lost. So it's by far the industry that's been impacted the most through the pandemic.
While COVID-19 vaccine rollout is now beginning to happen on a larger scale, the economic effects from coronavirus-related lockdowns are likely to impact San Diego's 3rd largest industry for years to come.
At this point in time, we are looking at probably a 5-year recovery horizon for the travel and tourism sector. The longer we have businesses stay closed, the less clarity that we have in terms of how we can operate and what the new guidelines will be, the more difficult it is for businesses to be able to sustain themselves.
Capich says that the Tourism Authority and other industry sectors worked with the county's reopening team to submit a proposal on safe operating guidelines in the fall, but have not yet received a response or approval from the state. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria gave the first State of the City address for his term Wednesday night. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says the speech was sobering but hopeful.
Honestly, the state of our city is fragile right now, but I have faith that it won't be for much longer.
There's no sugarcoating the dire situation many San Diegans are facing under the COVID-19 pandemic. But the mayor made a few policy announcements, including a pledge to incorporate housing into new or redeveloped city building projects.
This could mean building apartments on top of new libraries and fire stations. And I will take a thoughtful approach to make sure that our transit system and our infrastructure can support these new units.
But absent a big influx of federal infrastructure dollars, it's unlikely the city will be building a lot of new libraries and fire stations. In the next few months, Gloria faces the challenge of closing a budget deficit he says exceeds $150 million. In the meantime, Gloria says for those still struggling financially,
next month, we will bring a proposal to the City Council that will extend our current eviction moratorium to keep families in their homes, help folks pay back their rent, and stop small businesses from being evicted.
Previous city council votes suggested waning support for the eviction moratorium, but the political landscape is in Gloria's favor, with 5 new council members and an unprecedented 8-1 Democratic majority. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Developers are trying to breathe new life onto the land of an old golf course at Carmel Mountain Ranch, but not without some pushback. The public now has a chance to offer its 2 cents about the proposed housing project to build 1,200 homes on the property. Supporters say the area needs more housing for teachers, firefighters, and policemen. Opponents of the project say the development paves over precious open space.
We don't want to come across as a bunch of people who are NIMBYs and don't want anything in their backyard at all, but we would like this project to at least attempt to retain the character of what Carmel Mountain Ranch is.
Developer New Urban West says it wants to build parks, trails, and that 70% of the land will be preserved as open space. The public comment period is open until February the 8th. The increasingly acidic ocean is making mussel shells softer as they grow along the California coast. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson has details.
Scientists say the planet's warming climate is affecting mussels that grow in California waters. UC San Diego graduate student Elizabeth Bullard studied recent mussel samples and compared them to records taken 60 years ago. She says today's mussels are reacting to an ocean that's becoming more acidic and not to the water's higher temperatures, and that is leading to softer shells.
Are the shells really weakening that much? Or do they have alternative ways to compensate for that change in mineralogy?
Bullard studies the animal because mussels play an important role in nearshore habitats. Her findings are published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
We are talking about some very gusty winds still working their way through some of the mountains and canyons across the area. So be ready for that. The fire danger remains high here as we head through the next couple of days. We're also talking about the weekend staying dry when the winds do die down. But next week, there's going to be more winds as a new storm system comes in. So we still have, again, some gusty winds across the area. No red flag warnings right here. However, you don't have to head far to the north to find some of those red flag warnings across portions of the area and into the greater Los Angeles area. So that will be a concern, again, as we go through not only the next few hours, but into part of the day tomorrow. Tonight, temperatures back into the 50s, 51 in Escondido, 44 though for Oceanside, and 34 in Mount Laguna. As we transfer through time, the story has been warm, and guess what? We're going to be quite warm across the area as we head throughout tomorrow. High temperatures possibly coming close to records across our area as, again, Those temperatures are well above normal. We should be in the mid-60s this time of year. San Diego, lower 80s for you for an afternoon high in the city, and elsewhere we're still talking about temperatures back into the 80s or even 90s in a few spots. So it's going to be, again, a very warm one for January. That continues in through this weekend. So the warm trend through this weekend continues. The fire danger is still there as we go into Saturday, and then we will start to see things change a bit more come Monday night into Tuesday. Next storm system, an upper level low, will be gearing offshore, and that will create some very gusty winds in some areas. Towards the coast, the temperatures do go down as we go into next week, back to the mid-60s, closer to average, but until then, a warm stretch right through the weekend. That's going to be true through our inland locations as well, where we're in the 80s before we get back to the mid-60s. Mountains, yes, holding on to the lower 70s as we start off the weekend. And for the deserts here, we're going to be in the 80s the next couple of days. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Melissa Constanzer.
The YMCA of San Diego County is hosting its Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Human Dignity Award virtually this evening. This year, the award will go to Dr. Wilma Wooten, the county's public health officer, for her efforts to promote a science-based response to COVID-19 pandemic. The Human Dignity Award is given each year to a person who exemplifies the work and character of Dr. King. The county's new mass vaccination site is bringing medical workers some relief. KPBS health reporter Taryn Mento says the operation that launched just days ago is making access simpler for all eligible healthcare personnel.
Vaccinations were initially accessible only for hospital workers. Now doses are open to all healthcare personnel, but where they could get an injection was at first confusing. The San Diego County Medical Society represents more than 4,600 retired physicians, but also current medical students and doctors, and not all work in hospitals. President Dr. Holly Yang says a limited number of medical practices actually have the vaccine to give to their staff, but she says the new site at Petco Park cleared that up.
The level of anxiety and worry around that has significantly improved. People are not all vaccinated yet. We still have a way to go. But people, I would say my anecdotal evidence is that our phone calls have gone way down at the County Medical Society around sort of how do I navigate the system, and now people know where to go.
The county also has 4 smaller vaccination sites around the region, but Yang says access will again be a challenge for the next priority group of older adults.
You don't want just everyone who can access everything on their phone and has access to a car are the only people who get vaccinated, right? You need to think about what about the people that are harder to reach? What about people who, maybe English isn't their first language or they don't have access to technology?
County officials have said they'll work with partner organizations to get the word out, including community healthcare workers that focus on immigrant populations. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
The state says older adults are also now eligible, but the county isn't making its sites open to them just yet. We're following all of the latest developments on the vaccine rollout for you at kpbs.org. Just click on the Tracking COVID tab on our homepage, then the new tab, Vaccines. You'll find links to the county's vaccination sites and information on who is eligible for a shot now. Several members of Congress want to award the Congressional Gold Medal to a U.S. Capitol Police officer who kept rioters out of the Senate chambers last week. Officer Eugene Goodman lured them away from the unguarded chambers while lawmakers were debating an objection to Arizona's Electoral College vote count. The bill says Goodman was the only thing standing between the mob and the U.S. Senate, and his actions saved lives and defended democracy.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, investigations and calls for justice intensify in the wake of the Capitol riot that led to the president's second impeachment. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And here's another look at today's top stories. Crews are mopping up a brush fire fueled by dry winds that swept over dozens of acres in San Marcos. It started around 12:30 this afternoon in a botanical garden at Palomar College and then spread to a brushy hillside. Helicopters battle the flames from above, along with firefighters on the ground. Evacuations were ordered in nearby neighborhoods for a time, but have been lifted. No damage or injuries were reported. UC San Diego says it can now offer as many as 500 coronavirus vaccines per day for patients 65 and older. But it will be a while before it's more widely available. Scripps Health says it's still finalizing vaccines for frontline healthcare workers, but may have some left over for seniors. Healthcare systems will communicate directly with patients 65 and over to make appointments once they get vaccines. And overcoming the hurdles of homelessness, social injustice, and the pandemic were front and center in San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria's first State of the City address. Gloria said the city also faces other issues, including a budget deficit exceeding $150 million. He is prioritizing the safe reopenings of schools and childcare and combating the housing crisis by focusing on new construction in neighborhoods near transit and jobs. San Diego has a new millionaire after a Chevron station on Linda Vista Road sold a winning Powerball lottery ticket. The ticket with 5 matching numbers, but missing the Powerball number, is worth almost $2,800,000. No one hit the jackpot, so the next drawing will be worth $550 million. The odds of matching all 5 numbers and the Powerball, well, that is 1 in 293 million. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.